Hey, it's Jordan once again, Ancient Literature Dude, and I thought I would do something a little bit different today and do a book review. I've done a number of videos on the Gothic language on the channel, and it's a language that seems to be relatively popular and interesting to people, so I thought that I would share my experience with the textbook that I used, which is An Introduction to the Gothic Language by Thomas O. Lambdin. And as you can see, it's not a hardcover, which is a bit of a bummer, but not always a huge deal. A number of the textbooks and dictionaries, even that I use, are not hardcover, and they've held up pretty well. My only real issue with this book in particular is the size. It's a little bit unwieldy for use, and I think it contributes to maybe having the book get scuffed up a little bit more quickly than it otherwise would. Although that could be because my cat likes to fight with it. I'm not really sure. But as far as the text itself, I think it's a very good one. Now, I've used Lambdin before. Before I even got this book, I studied Coptic through his similar text on Coptic, and I found that to be a very good one. I found this one to be of similar quality, and it's laid out in a similar way. It has 23 lessons that are, of course, graded, and concepts are introduced slowly and explained clearly. Lambdin does a good job of not only explaining the immediate aspects and nature of the language and of the grammar, but he does a good job of giving the background, the kind of scholarly background on its descent from Proto-Indo-European. There's a real kind of a comparative aspect to it, which is important because, of course, Gothic is often and sometimes almost exclusively studied for comparative purposes because it's the earliest majorly attested written Germanic language, and it's fairly early on, even within the Proto-Indo-European language family in general. But within the text and at the end of the book, he includes a massive kind of a discussion of the comparative aspects. There's an entire section at the end that goes over lesson by lesson the exact etymology of particular words. It goes over numbers. It talks about the grammar and the way that it developed from Proto-Indo-European. So if you're interested in the comparative aspect, it's a fairly full handling of that. But it explains the grammar itself very well. It also includes almost the entire major corpus of Gothic literature in the form of text. The Gospel of Luke in particular is fully annotated. Every word that doesn't appear previously in the lessons is glossed. Difficult passages are often explained. And a number of notes are included. It's very helpful. And there's a full glossary, which can be useful in its own right. So those are the pros of the book. And there are many of them. There's a lot to recommend the book. My only real criticisms, and one is somewhat more major than the other, are that the book doesn't include a kind of a simple chart form of the grammar itself. The grammar is explained very clearly within the lessons, and the charts presented in the lessons are clear, but there's no chart anywhere in the book that includes everything at kind of an overview. And this may be a matter of personal preference, but I do like to be able to quickly glance through a book, flip through a book, and get to the meat of the grammar just for memorization purposes. It's not a huge deal because you can access that kind of information online and print out, tables for yourself. But I do like to have that included in text, and at least for the verbs, that was included in his book on Coptic. So I'm not sure why it wasn't included here. And the only other issue, and it's a fairly minor one, is that the Gothic text in the book is almost exclusively presented in the Roman alphabet. And again, it's not a huge deal because Gothic often tends to be represented in that way anyway, because again, it's at this point a mostly scholarly language that's used for comparative reasons or reconstructive purposes. But I do like to get the flavor, the kind of feel of a language by really getting familiar with the the native alphabet of the particular language. But again, it's not a huge deal. It's more of an aesthetic thing. But in any event, yeah, those are my thoughts about the book. I think it's a good one. I would highly recommend it. I have my minor criticisms of it, but beyond those caveats, I would recommend it to anyone who's interested in the language. So again, just want to share my thoughts on it. Hope you're all doing well, and I will talk to you again soon.